Now it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Emma Brunskill, who is professor in computer science. Emma uses a mixture of machine learning, control theory, artificial intelligence to design autonomous agents that learn to and from interacting with people. So Emma, tell us about that.
Who here has seen the movie The Matrix? All right, almost everyone. In The Matrix, at one point, Trinity, one of the main characters, needs to fly a helicopter. 5 seconds earlier, she didn't know how to fly a helicopter, so she downloads a program into her brain, and then she can fly. I work to try to make such madly efficient, radically real-time education a reality. And while I don't think we're going to be able to replace the CMU education with a program we download into our brain anytime soon, I do think that we're making substantial progress and that we can do much more than what we're doing right now. Oop, I think did that auto advance? Just 1 second. Let me make sure there's no auto timings. All right. So let me first tell you about why this is important. I probably don't have to argue to this crowd that education can alleviate poverty and help transform individual opportunity. But I also think that it's worth us to reflect a little bit about how far we are from where we could be. In the 1980s, there was a new upstart that wanted to try to replace the quarter pounder. They had this idea, the third pounder. They made both of these the same price, and they thought they would sweep the market. Unfortunately for them, Americans were unwilling to pay the same price for less beef. So it's good. If you weren't laughing, then maybe you also could benefit from our tutoring systems. So this, unfortunately, we might think this was just a product of the 80s, but unfortunately, this type of fundamental lack of quantitative understanding still persists today. And I think that these skills are as equally important now as they were 30 years ago, and perhaps even more so, given the information economy. So why is this? Well, we've already been hearing a lot about how we shouldn't be taking a one-size-fits-all approach to education. And we've also heard some really exciting results about how maybe we could move beyond that to personalized education tools. But these are still really expensive, often requiring 1 to 2 years. And despite advances of things like crowdsourcing and these additional tools, I think we need to have new ways to try to make this much, much more cost-efficient to provide personalized education. The other thing I want to argue is that we're not done yet, that even taking all of what we know about how people learn, that we haven't actually cracked the education case yet. And so we're going to need additional tools to help us move beyond how we think we should best teach to actually achieve the best teaching possible. I think we can do this, at least in part, using machine learning. Machine learning can help us make tutoring systems that get more effective, engaging, and efficient as they teach every new student. We can do this in the same way that ad companies do this, by monitoring which ads actually generate the most revenue. Except for instead of trying to make money directly, we can look at what types of activities are most efficient at helping students learn. Let me give you an example of this using Battleship Numberline, which is a fractions number line estimation game that's actually developed by Derek Lomas and his colleagues who are here today. So in these type of games, there's often a number of different settings we have to choose. Things like, how long should we present a fraction before the system times out? Now in advance, we often don't know what the right way is to make these settings in order to make the games as efficient and effective as possible. So what we can do is try different variants of the game. If we were going to do this using a standard scientific method, we would just run a control trial where we have students in different conditions. But fortunately, we can move beyond that, move beyond standard A/B testing, and remove the needless distinction between a fixed experimental phase and deployment. We can do this by using online optimization ideas, things like multi-arm bandits, which continuously change what variants are given to students as we see what is most effective. This allowed us to achieve 20 to 50% greater engagement compared to a standard experiment or A/B test. The second key opportunity comes from the fact that we're starting to get these enormous logs of big data about student learning. This is coming from MOOCs and all these tutoring systems that are starting to be deployed. And what we want to be able to do is to take this offline, previous data and use it to figure out how to improve future instruction. Now, there's been a lot of excitement about all this data that's being generated, but most of that excitement has translated into people trying to figure out how to better assess or evaluate student learning. So we've been focused on graphs like the following, figuring out how well we can predict student performance compared to what the actual performance is. But what I think we want, in reality, is that all students succeed. We don't just care about prediction, and we have to move beyond that. That requires us to think about instructional strategies. An instructional strategy is a thing like, should we teach fraction subtraction before we teach fraction addition? Or even adaptive strategies like, do not teach a student addition until they've mastered common denominators. So what we want to be able to do is to take this offline data and evaluate how different instructional strategies might do if we were to use them with future students. In particular, we use this for refraction, a fractions game that has been played by hundreds of thousands of students. We were curious about what game challenge to do when in order to keep students engaged and learning the most they could. So we took our machine learning methods and took all the thousands of previously completed player game data in order to understand what strategies we think would do better in the future. After identifying them, we ran a new experiment with 2,000 additional students, and we found that the strategies we'd identified using old data actually helped new students perform 30% better. We're now using these ideas for lots of other types of tutoring systems, things like figuring out whether we should show someone a video or an exercise in the fractions tutor I showed. Now, the methods that we've been using so far allow us to look at a particular instructional strategy and estimate how well we think it would do if we used it in the future. But in fact, one of the biggest potentials of machine learning is their ability to be adaptive as they interact and get more data. Just as how I told you how we could sort of do an online optimization and try different sorts of game variants, we would like to similarly try to take offline data and simulate how a machine learning algorithm might work if we were to deploy it in the future. Our preliminary results on doing this involve cutting-edge reinforcement learning, and we are extremely excited about how this could allow us to much better leverage all the data we already have to improve future instruction. I'm going to close with I'm going to spend the last few minutes on one bigger challenge that I think we need to tackle, and that is rapidly accelerating our progress of understanding what works in education. Some of my colleagues at CMU recently estimated that there are 200 trillion different methods of instruction. Even if we could test one of those per day, that would take us roughly 1 trillion years. That's a really long time, and there are a lot of people waiting. In America alone, there's about 1 million college freshmen that require remedial instruction. They need us to be able to better figure out the best ways to teach. The business as usual is failing them and failing our society. To do this, we're trying to rapidly create systems that can learn much, much faster with very little data, kind of the little data revolution instead of the big data revolution. And this is important because every single data point we have is a student that is either succeeding or failing at learning. We do this in collaboration with learning scientists because figuring out the best way to teach requires us to understand how humans learn. As a concrete example of this, we have this self-optimizing tutoring system for teaching basic statistics concepts. We chose this domain because we feel that these type of skills are going to be prerequisites for success in today's knowledge economy. What we would like to do is to be able to teach basic statistics concepts 5 times faster than is currently possible, so that we could shrink a 2-year curriculum into a summer catch-up course. In order to do this, we are also creating new tools that can be integrated into existing platforms, things like edX, so that everyone can start to create online systems that can do this self-evolution. So to conclude, I think that we have a massive challenge and many opportunities. We already have machine learning systems that can self-optimize and improve as they teach more students. We are very close to being able to leverage large amounts of existing data in order to improve future instruction. And I think next we need to focus really hard on how we can rapidly accelerate our understanding of what works in education. I think it will require all of us, and there will be huge benefits to all future learners. Thank you.